Well, the gears of war sure are turning faster and faster. This as the situation is quickly devolving inside of Europe and soon probably involve a lot of countries. As in this video, I specifically wanted to argue how the Russians, who are very quiet now, probably will be looking at the United States and other countries for their Pearl Harbor-like attack that the Ukrainians are stating as a major success and victory, as of course the warmongers are getting everything that they wanted. But clearly we are being put in a more precarious, dangerous situation that I think we have ever been in when it comes to this particular conflict, as there's a lot of talk about exotic weaponries and the escalation of this conflict, which is inevitable as we now wait for the Russian response. There was also an election in Poland and a lot of things to discuss here that we have been right on the money about. As of course we told you, expect major escalations as soon as the peace talks devolve. They have devolved. They're continuing to devolve. Expect bigger escalations from here. We'll tell you our predictions in this particular video. So click subscribe and the notification button because there's a lot to get into. Now, the Kremlin has been quiet in the last 24 hours, which is a little bit unusual, as we are now all awaiting a response here. We saw Russian spokespersons in Istanbul saying, just wait, just give us some time. And we, of course, are all waiting here anxiously to see how Putin will, quote, plot his revenge, as they call this Russia's Black Day, as right now the list of possibilities of what the response will be here are probably vast, since Vladimir Putin has a lot of devastating weapons at his disposal. Which one will he utilize? How will the response look like? Well, it's pretty clear that the international community now is also on the edge of their seats, as we had some major announcements by the United Kingdom that we're going to be playing in just a little bit with the Prime Minister there saying, yeah, we're ready for war. And they have been preparing and getting ready for a while. If you've been watching this channel, you know exactly what we are talking about. But before getting into all of that, we wanted to tell you about the sponsor of today's video, and that, of course, is Monetary Gold. Definitely go check these guys out. We checked their ratings. They have some really good, impressive ratings. As, of course, there's a well-known saying on Wall Street, sell in May and go away. This year, even the big players are echoing that sentiment. Bank of America and UBS are both urging caution, advising investors to sell the rally. Markets are still struggling to regain their footing. We've seen over $11 trillion in wealth erased from U.S. equities, and the broader economic outlook remains uncertain. Historical periods like this have often led to increased central bank intervention, which more often than not means more money printing and a weaker dollar. In uncertain environments, one asset has shown remarkable resilience over thousands of years: physical gold. TD Securities points out that gold remains under-owned by institutional standards, and Goldman Sachs is projecting a possible rise to $4,000 an ounce by 2026. If you're looking for stability in turbulent times, owning physical gold can offer a level of diversification and protection that paper assets simply can't. Here's the next step. Call Monetary Gold at 1-888-443-1464. Sorry, 1-888-443-4164. Ask how you can hold physical gold through a tax advantage gold IRA and what incentives they're offering today. Again, that's 1-888-443-4164. Let them know Luke sent you. We got it, of course, also here on the screen, so you guys will be able to get the information here and support the sponsors that allow us to continue our work here for you guys. Now, the situation here is a bit unstable, to say the least here, and we could expect it to get even more unstable from here, as there's now talks of Russian super weapons potentially being deployed here. Weapons like the Avant-Garde hypersonic glide vehicle, the 9M730 Burstervestigt nuclear-powered cruise missiles, the 3M22 Zakharan, which is a hypersonic anti-ship missile. We're talking about the Poseidon weapon that would be devastating, as of course it is an unmanned underwater drone that essentially launches a small nuclear explosion that creates tsunamis. We got the H-47M2 Kinzhal, a hypersonic air-launched ballistic missile systems. All of these missile systems and weaponry systems the Russians haven't used. We got the RS-28 Sarmat, a super heavy MRAV-equipped intercontinental ballistic missile. And listen, the possibility of them deploying a lot of this is very likely, as we have seen. The Europeans and NATO, along with the United States during Biden presidency, say we're going to use our satellite technology that the United States has in order to strike deep inside of Russia. Russia says, you know what, we're going to take out the Orsenic missiles if you guys want to do that. And for a second there, as the Orsenic missiles were flying down with hypersonic speed, something that, of course, air missile defense systems are incapable of stopping in vast majority of the incidences, unless they're very lucky. For a second there, people thought that there was nuclear warheads attached to those missile systems. As DC Drano has an interesting take here, saying that there are, quote, American fighter forces embedded within Ukraine, and they're helping gather intelligence and coordinate attacks. This latest attack just took out 1/3 of Russia's nuclear-capable bombers that America said we wouldn't attack in a previously agreed-to nuclear treaty. Now, with this nuclear treaty being violated, with Russia now saying, hey, these Ukrainians can't pull this off unless it's the direct involvement of NATO and the United States, with Germany coming out and saying, yeah, we're going to use long-range satellite-capable systems from the United States in order to bomb you. We're just going to have a Ukrainian standing by as we essentially do everything. This had the Russians come out saying, hey, you guys are playing with fire here, and you are creating a situation where, of course, we are going to be blaming you guys, not just Ukraine, for this attack here, as there was even serious consideration and talks on Russian state television, along with Russian military and political figures talking about how Russia needs to soon strike Berlin. Yes, that's actually what is being discussed here, which of course would trigger NATO Article 5. Russia has been since saying they do not want any NATO expansion. NATO has been expanding very steadily in the region, and now the situation truly is something that we have to ascertain. If the shoe was on the other foot, how would we respond? And it's pretty clear all the talks of peace through strength are just really trying to flex strength here. Let's just be honest with ourselves here. What would happen if a foreign country would attack 4 nuclear-capable bombers that the United States had, going after our nuclear-capable arsenal? I mean, this right here is going to be pushing the Russians to say, you know what, if they want to take out our nuclear capabilities, we should use them before they take it out. And those are the talks happening right now, as we are seeing visualizations, as of course it's impossible to wipe out Russia's nuclear capabilities. But the fact that this is even tried and attained here, the fact that so many of these specific airplanes, so many of these specific capabilities are gone after, highlights a big escalation here that there's no going back from. Now, I know there's some people celebrating this. How will the Russians respond? They'll probably respond with some intercontinental ballistic missile systems. Let's just be real with ourselves. That's a possibility here. The world's waiting on edge here. And when it comes to these missile systems, they could be equipped with low-yield nuclear weapons. That probably is what's going to happen. I do see Putin potentially launching some kind of nuclear device, whether it's a show of force or a threat. I think it might be done near Odessa. Even just a symbolic kind of explosion showing, look what we're capable of here. As the British are, of course, preparing for war here. And we've been documenting all the preparations that have been going into this. And when you see the preparations, when you see how everything was kind of building up and unfolding, you see here that this isn't just something that just happened quickly. And sure, this has been in the works for a while. And it didn't take a genius to see, oh, they've been prepping, they've been building and creating and manipulating these types of scenarios to where we are right now. And the inevitable is going to be, of course, global geopolitical foreign conflict of global worldwide proportions that should terrify the average human being out there.
And today, following through on this review, I want to set out 3 fundamental changes that we're going to deliver. First, we are moving to warfighting readiness.
That is the Prime Minister of the United Kingdom that, along with the UK government, just recently talked about how they want nuclear-armed U.S. fighter jets to, quote, counter the Russian threat. As the United States has been acting like the kind of bodyguard, the protectorate of the Ukrainian and the Europeans that have been kind of talking crazy, as a lot of people now are saying, Donald Trump, you need to get out of NATO. That is the consideration. That is the talking points that are going on right now. And it looks like a lot of pizza joints, specifically around the Pentagon, are working overtime, especially in the middle of the night here, highlighting how they're busier than ever. And there's this kind of pizza ordering Pentagon vector that highlights how there's a lot of people within the U.S. branches of military that are, of course, working overtime and dealing with very wild and insane situations. This is one of them, and all hands are on deck. All militaries, all governments are understanding that these escalations are vast, they're big, and they do include playing a very dangerous game where at any moment, at any time, this could get completely out of control, which is highlighting the kind of rhetoric that happened after this major attack that the Ukrainians are celebrating, as we had Ukrainian representatives go out to the corporate media and said, yo, we told Donald Trump about this. The White House came back and said, no, they never told us anything about this. But the fact that Lindsey Graham was just over there during all of this does highlight how this is very peculiar, as well as Donald Trump's type of Truth Social message, which we will tell you about in a little bit, as people are saying this wasn't just Ukraine acting on their own. Ukraine doesn't act on their own. This was the intelligentsia. This was the deep state. This was the CIA. And some people are saying this was Donald Trump, who was mad about Putin not, of course, meeting some of the negotiation demands, and therefore giving the okay on this launch. Now, what's really going on here? Are the Ukrainians telling the truth here? Is Donald Trump telling the truth here? Again, we do not know. We still haven't seen Donald Trump kind of address this type of particular Russian Pearl Harbor attack from what I have seen. But it's pretty clear that the White House is trying to, of course, step away from this. Will they be getting out of NATO? Well, who knows? But the fact that Lindsey Graham is over there right now, a U.S. senator that, of course, loves war, is a big neocon that a lot of people in the right-wing media space believe that there's a lot of compromise on in order to push these type of crazy, insane takes here. This is what he had to say in Kiev just a few moments ago, by the way.
President Trump said that Ukraine doesn't have good cards. Well, Russia's much bigger and has a lot more people. I get that. But the world has a lot of cards against Russia. And one of those cards that we have is about to be played in the United States Senate. In America, you have more than one person at the card table. We have 3 branches of government, and the House and the Senate are poised to act. What would change our mind? If Russia came to the table, agreed to a ceasefire, and earnestly...
Yeah, well, we have Ukrainians' demands that we're going to be going over in a little bit. We previously went over the Russian demands here. But Lindsey Graham, after this Russian Pearl Harbor, said, quote, the ever-resourceful Ukrainians used creative drone warfare tactics to successfully attack Russia bombers and military assets used to, quote, take out Ukrainian citizens and destroy their country. Russia indiscriminately takes the lives of men, women, and children. It is time for the world to act decisively against Russia's aggression by holding China and others accountable for buying cheap Russian oil that props up Putin's war machine. If you want this war to end, push China to help to end it. As a lot of people are saying, what Lindsey Graham is doing here is directly interfering with the goals of Donald Trump that is trying to end this war. As Zelensky there, of course, is celebrating this and giving his own personal kind of take on this. Now, a lot of people who or on the kind of Ukrainian side are saying Putin's bombing cities. He is. The Russians are explaining to their citizenry and on the world stage saying we're bombing military targets in the cities that the Ukrainians are putting in their cities. Two sides to every story here, as Alex Jones here has come out and said that NATO has officially attacked Russia in a desperate attempt to try to stop Trump's peace plan. He says this is totally insane and that Trump must pull out of NATO now. And sure, that's the sentiment that, of course, would de-escalate a lot of this. But the question still remains, what did Donald Trump know? Did he give the go-ahead? Did he give the approval here? If he didn't, we could expect the United States to pull out probably even more, as the United States still is involved. The United States spent a lot of money, even when Donald Trump cut aid to Ukraine temporarily. The U.S. government was still financing drone tech development to the tune of hundreds of millions of dollars for the Ukrainians. Now, the Americans here aren't just supplying a lot of the weapons, a lot of the money, a lot of the research, a lot of the satellite information, which allows them to target all of this. And the Russians understand this. The Russians understand, hey, the Europeans are doing this, the United States is doing this, and it wouldn't surprise me if they're potentially considering retaliation, not just against Ukraine, but more specifically against Western assets in Europe and NATO at large here. Now, what will the United States do? How will they respond here? Well, it looks like Donald Trump is acting tough against Putin. I know the corporate media likes to say he's a Putin puppet. Idiots. Donald Trump, during his first administration, was the one that lethally armed Ukraine, something that Barack Obama was afraid to do. And then the conflict kind of expanded during Joe Biden's presidency. But Donald Trump is a tough negotiator here. But now we're getting insight. A lot of people are posting this tweet here on Truth Social a few days ago. On May 27th, Donald Trump said, what Vladimir Putin doesn't realize is that if it weren't for me, lots of really bad things would have already happened to Russia, and I mean really bad. He's playing with fire. I think the overall consensus is Donald Trump was frustrated with Putin. He gave the go-ahead here. And now, during these negotiations, they're saying, we could do worse stuff. Do you want us to do worse stuff, or are you going to meet us? And you're going to meet our demands here. Tough negotiations are at play right now in Istanbul. The start of these negotiations aren't good. Okay, the Ukrainians launching missile attacks into Moscow. The Ukrainians doing these kind of covert attacks against the Russian nuclear force. That's not a good start to the negotiations. Now, there are agreements for prisoner swamps where the Russians are like, okay, we captured some Ukrainians. The Ukrainians are like, we captured some Russians. We'll just trade you them. Okay, cool. And they start trading different soldiers back and forth. And most of those soldiers, I mean, there's different reports of how they're being treated here, but at least they get to go home and spend time with some of their family members. Now, that's one of the kind of goodwill signs here. Other than that, no goodwill. Other than that, it's looking really bad here, as Ukraine just released their conditions for peace in Turkey, saying that they want a complete ceasefire for 30 days. The Russians are saying if there's a ceasefire for 30 days, the Ukrainians are just going to rearm, re-equip, especially on the front lines that they keep losing villages to the Russians, as the Russians are having slow but steady progress inside of the Donbass region, taking more and more of the Ukrainian territory. The Ukrainians want a prisoner exchange, all for all. The Russians are saying one for one, but the Ukrainians are saying, just give us all the troops back. The Ukrainians want Zelensky and Putin to meet. I think that's a great idea. I think these men should look eye to eye. I think they should shake hands. I think they should sit down with Donald Trump and other world leaders there, and they should work out their differences and try to, of course, stop this nonsense from escalating. They want no restrictions for the armed forces of Ukraine. And the Russians are going to see that as a direct threat against them because they don't want the Ukrainian military to be built up on their border. They want lack of international recognition of new Russian territories. They don't want the community to say, "Hey, that's Russian territory." They want payment of reparations by Russia. Russia, in its poor economic kind of state, won't be doing that. Russia created their list of demands, and Ukrainians are saying, we're not going to do that. And truly, we are on the pathway for this conflict escalating. And again, the British calling for fighter jets to carry nuclear bombs here just shows you how far gone we are. This is just crazy. They're like, we need American-made planes right now. with tactical nukes right now. Why? This is like the Cold War, but worse, since there's actual physical fighting inside of Europe right now, and that historically doesn't go too well. Look at the history books there. Yeah, let's examine a little bit of history there. What happens in Europe? Oh yeah, insane turmoil, tumultuous situations, and bloodshed over what? Arbitrary border lines and trade disputes, as of course the history there, especially in Ukraine. Ukraine's known for being like the Afghanistan of Europe. It is very key, very rich with natural resources, but a place where there's a lot of historical fighting. You look at what was happening there in the 1930s. My goodness, so many people have lost their lives here. We're dealing with a major depopulation crisis and agenda, and this doesn't help it. Again, crazy situation, wild situation, expected to get worse. If you agree with my assessment and if you appreciated our work documenting and talking about this for many years on end now, subscribe, click the notification button. Thank you again to our sponsor for working with us, monetarygold.com. The link is down in the description. Click on them and go support them. Tell them Luke sent you, and I appreciate all of the amazing work and all of the incredible stuff that you guys allow us to do here for you. I love you guys. Stay tuned for more here on youtube.com/wearechange.